Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Agri-Food Conversations, brought to you by iSelect Fund, the Van Trump Report, the Yield Lab Institute, and Family Farms Group. My name is David Yoakum. I'm an associate on the iSelect Fund Ventures team, and I'm excited to welcome you all to our discussion today. Agri-Food Conversations is all about driving innovation in agriculture. Each month, we highlight a specific theme, including emerging topics such as soil health, plant genetics, vertical farming, and aquaculture, to name a few. This month's theme is carbon management and measurement in agriculture. And on today's call, we are joined by Lars Derud, CEO of EarthOptics. EarthOptics is developing a range of agricultural technologies designed to analyze the soil and generate below ground, near real-time actionable data layers encompassing the physical, chemical, and biological attributes of soil. Its goal is to enable farmers to more easily obtain the accurate soil information they need to make well-informed decisions about their operations. Each of you knows that companies are more likely to succeed with the right network of customers, talent, investors, and advisors. We have invited you to this call because you're some of the smartest, most talented people in EarthOptics market. You're potential customers for EarthOptics products and services. You have built a company similar to EarthOptics, or you are a sophisticated business person or agricultural professional who understands the market and the challenges and opportunities that EarthOptics may face. Now, before we get started, we have a quick poll question to get a better idea of who we have on the call today. Please take a few seconds to answer. And while that poll is running, a few process comments. We are not soliciting investment. This presentation is to provide information to help EarthOptics find customers, mentors, and other strategic relationships that can help them grow their business. You are all on mute. You can use the chat window to ask a question at any time. This presentation is being recorded and will be available for replay. So without further delay, I am pleased to introduce Lars Derud, CEO of EarthOptics. Lars, please feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Well, I really appreciate you having me here for the discussion today, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? All right. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to be talking to you about what we're working on at EarthOptics. So EarthOptics is a relatively young technology startup focused on agriculture. We've been around for a little over 2 years, but we're really proud of the work we've accomplished so far. I'm looking forward to speaking to you more about it during this call. And so we've really focused on trying to build what we call the soil cloud. We want to bring all the soil data that we can together in a single cloud-based system and bring machine learning to bear on trying to solve a number of agriculture problems. And so we've made significant progress already. We've been working on our first product called TillMapper. And TillMapper is focused on solving what truly is a multi-billion-dollar problem for US agriculture, and helping to answer the question on where and when to treat soil compaction. And that can be through tillage, that can be through various methods you want, including cover crops. And so what we're really all about is trying to tell you where you've got compaction problems and help you find the best solution for mitigating that. But the platform we built is quite generic. And so we're already working on targeting it towards a number of other areas, particularly carbon and measuring total carbon content in soil. And we're also working on adding nutrient mapping to it as well. So we've already established a significant partnership with a major agricultural equipment manufacturer. And so really our near-term goal is to get our measurement systems on as many tractors as we can, starting in 2022. But for the time being, our service is available on a service basis where we come out and measure your field and deliver your web-based prescription to you. So when we set out to work on this, we're trying to solve a really basic problem. Doesn't have anything to do with compaction at the start of it, doesn't have anything to do with carbon. Really, the technical problem we're trying to solve is how do you go about making measurements and maps of things that when the accurate way to make that measurement is to stick something into the ground and often send it back to a lab. So whether it's a compaction measurement with a penetrometer or a soil probe where we're trying to take a nutrient sample or a carbon sample or a bulk density, or even outside of agriculture in areas of construction turf management. So often there's things that we're interested in, and the only way to get the accurate measurement of it is to stick something in the ground, but that just gives a single point sample. And if we wanted to make a really dense, rich map over thousands of acres, it'd be too costly and impractical to do for certainly most of agriculture applications. On the flip side, from very accurate in situ sticking stuff in the ground measurements, we have a number of remote sensing type of technologies, whether on satellite or aircraft or even nearby standoff technologies that can be carried on a vehicle or a tractor. that can make all sorts of measurements of interest, but they're often only correlated and sometimes only loosely correlated to the thing we're really interested in. Like I'll be talking mostly about compaction and soil density measurement, which is key for whether you want to till or remediate with various cover crops or whether you're trying to make a carbon calculation. So we have things like ground penetrating radar and synthetic aperture radar and electromagnetic induction measurements that can be carried at speed on a vehicle or a tractor during your normal operations. But, but none of those sensors are directly measuring the thing we're trying to get at, which would be soil density, soil compaction, soil carbon content, but they do measure things that are correlated to them. So we built a machine learning platform that allows us to take those costly but very accurate in situ measurements, feed them in as a training model to our low cost and easy to gather standoff measurements, and build the machine learning model to interpret those measurements we make at speed from a vehicle and bring both those measurements to bear in what now is a much lower cost, very detailed but very large scale map that's feasible to deliver over thousands and thousands of acres. So in general, we're trying to make measurements that ultimately can be made with a sensor mounted on a tractor that is happening vicariously every time you're out of the field through normal field operations, as trained with some actual physical in situ measurements on the ground. So it's really trying to bring the best of both worlds together with remote sensing type measurements that can be made on a tractor and the type of traditional soil sample measurements that are made by agronomists out in the field, usually quite coarsely, 1 acre or 2 acres or so. All right, so we really got into this because we think soil management until last couple of years has really been significantly underinvested. We're in many ways doing things the same way we've been doing them for 50, 60 years in terms of taking samples and sending them back to a lab. And we think there's a lot of room for bringing technology to bear to solve what are in the end fairly expensive problems that have not only economic impact on the grower and on our food supply in general, but also on sustainability of how we manage all our farms and fields. All right, so we've got a great team. Like I said, we're a young company. We're a startup that's been around for 2.5 years, but we've got an excellent team. Combination of deep agronomic experience and experience in firsthand experience as growers. We've got folks with significant decade-long machine learning product development expertise. And we also have a full bevy of cloud-based software programmers who are helping us build our cloud-first delivery system. So really proud of our combination of advisors and full-time staff that we put together over the last few years. All right, so this is a chart that really kind of shows in a fairly straightforward fashion what are the key steps we go through in this process that we've built. So our first step that you see on the right is collect mapping quality data. So we usually use satellite data when we're talking agriculture. It's usually NDVI at least. And we also have our own measurement platform, which consists today of electromagnetic induction and a ground penetrating radar sensor. Now, the induction EMI sensor, it's called, it's actually in principle a really straightforward sensor. It's really kind of like a metal detector. It's in essence no more complicated than how a metal detector works. And the ground penetrating radar is kind of like what it sounds like. It's a radar that's pointed at the ground that's designed to penetrate into the ground and get reflections back. Now, the signals that come off both of those sensors, you truly need to be an expert to directly interpret. And a lot of people get their PhDs in how to interpret those signals. So they've been used experimentally in agriculture for several decades now. Neither of those tools have truly made it into the mainstream because of the difficulty to interpret the data that comes off of them. And that's really where machine learning it comes into play. So then the second step we do is we go out to every single field that we operate on, and we take a set of moisture measurements and penetrometer measurements throughout the field. That becomes our training data. So then we drive the entire field with our measurement platform. We take all the data that was collected by the vehicle nearby where the probes were sampled and use those training data sets to build a model for how to interpret the otherwise difficult to interpret ground penetrating radar and EMI signals. Once that model is built, we apply it to all the data that was collected on the field and build our map. And so right now we're using it to do a full 3-dimensional compaction profile of the field down to 18 inches. And so really our customers are seeing, for many of them, the first time a 3D view of their field and their soil that they've never really seen before. And that is the end product we deliver is called Till Mapper. But like I said, we're taking that exact same measurement platform and extending it to making carbon measurements, which are really just soil density sampled together with a carbon density measurement. So the whole concept of being able to make a handful of costly in situ, sticking a probe in the ground measurement, and be able to take that to a very rich, high density map is really what we're all about. All right, so this is a great example of how TailMapper has been employed. So this is a field in Illinois. And so the image you're seeing on your right is a color map of tillage depth. So this is a tillage prescription. And what you're seeing on the is how many inches deep in color. And so the brown is representing, dark brown is representing 12 inches, dark green is representing 0 inches. So this is our map that we made before tillage was conducted, and the map on the right is made after the tillage was conducted. So this prescription that was made on the left was executed with the CNH tilling system. And what you can see is not only does CNH make a great product in terms of remediating compaction, but it also, we have an excellent prescription that only tilled exactly where the compaction was needed to. And in general, executing the prescription like I'm showing here is going to save about 40% of diesel fuel that would have otherwise been required to create this map. And that can really add up, since up to 2 gallons of diesel fuel can be required per acre to till the field. So every inch and every acre that isn't tilled is not only saving fuel, it's saving money, improving soil health, and in general, keeping more carbon sequestered in the soil. All right, we have a number of applications that we're rolling out using this exact same machine learning based measurement platform. I'm showing you some pictures here of manure leakage from hog houses. So you see the zoom here, every single little white box is a hog house. So there's a number of hog houses both on the bottom and upper section of the image. And you can see that probably over half of them have significant manure leakage that's coming out of them. The EPA requires every single state to, at some level, monitor and manage manure leaking from lagoons and hog houses. And so we think this is yet another great application for this type of technology, being able to map underground and do it at a much lower cost than was traditionally required with actual sample probes. So it's just another example of the type of rich maps we can make. And like I said, our big focus for 2021 here is bringing that same technology to carbon mapping, so we can get much more detailed carbon maps with fewer costly measurements, fewer probe measurements of carbon and bulk density, and hopefully make directly measuring carbon a much more practical reality for every single field in the United States. So I think that's that is my run through the slides. I'll stop there, start taking some questions. I'm happy to bounce around the charts as people bring up questions.
Thanks so much, Lars. Really excellent presentation. And please forgive any background noise on my end. Coming back on video. If there are any questions from the audience, now is a great time to ask. The best way to ask a question to Lars is typically through the Q&A box, as opposed to the text box. It makes things a little bit simpler to manage. So if you could please follow that, that'd be excellent. But Lars, I'm happy to kick things off here. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about like how this gets implemented with a current customer today, in terms of like what the calibration needs look like, how they end up receiving the data, and if they already use some sort of farm management or analytics package on their farm, whether or not they use EarthOptics separately, or if it's something that gets integrated into what they're currently using.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we offer it as a service. We've sold a handful of our machine units to people who want to operate themselves. Our big release for the units themselves is going to be next year. So primarily our customers are getting this as a service. So we come out to their fields, we take the training data sets, we drive over their field side by side, and they receive a tillage prescription via web-based login. So there's all sorts of interactivity on that platform where they can set the PSI levels they're looking to remediate to. They can say, hey, I want to understand how deeply I would need to till to manage all compaction levels above 200 PSI or 250 or 300. So they kind of set whether they're trying to be conservative or aggressive with compaction remediation, or they can just see how effectively a cover crop program may be working or where it's not working as well. And then once they're done with that, they can export a shapefile to bring into, in this case, a CNH automated tillage system, so they're only tilling precisely where the prescription says, or to adjust in any other kind of software management system that they want to use. So all our web base has standard shapefile export, which is ingestible by most other field systems. David, you're on mute, I think.
You're right, I am. When you think about the sort of different types of data that you can project in a more scalable manner, either for compaction or for carbon measurement, et cetera, what do you think about, like what stood out about compaction versus soil carbon or some other type of measurement that really stood out as to where you guys wanted to start out with?
To me, actually, the carbon and the compaction are really very one and the same type of thing. So the technology we've developed is designed to attack any problem where people were otherwise doing very costly and sparse measurements of sticking probes into the ground. And it's that high cost in pursuit of the accuracy required for the problem that was causing us to make very poor overall measurements over large fields, or just not doing it at all because we didn't want to spend the money for the application. So our goal is to be able to make very rich maps of anything that was otherwise produced by making samples in the ground and be able to do it in much richer map format at much lower per acre costs. And so that methodology and that goal applies to compaction, carbon, nutrient sampling, anything that you were otherwise measuring in the ground, rock identification, you name it. If you wanted to find something on the ground or make a map of some quantity in the soil, we wanted to do it a lot cheaper and come up with a technology platform that would make it a lot cheaper in the future. We started with compaction because we felt it was a really under pursued problem. Now it's estimated that compaction cost yield in the US alone is somewhere north of a $10 billion plus problem, maybe even as high as $20 billion in terms of lost yield every year due to overly compacted soils. And carbon came next really because it's tied in with compaction. And so the amount of carbon that's being sequestered in the soil is proportional to the density of the soil, which is also proportional to compaction levels. But really the prime target for increasing carbon sequestration in soils has been no-till programs. And so it's been assumed that less tillage is going to equal more carbon. It's going to equal improved organic activity in the soil. However, on the flip side, if you have truly compacted soil or root growth is limited, you could actually get into a direction where the soil is getting less healthy every single year. And it does need to ultimately be mechanically remediated to bring it back into that vibrant, rich environment that we're targeting. And so just being able to make a map of where that's happening instead of using rule of thumb and guessing and assumptions or treating an entire field all the same way, we thought was really an underserved space. And so it's be able to make accurate measurements of carbon and be able to do something about tillage in a more effective, sustainable fashion. We thought was all tied together, and it also benefits from that same lower cost measurement system.
Got it. That's really interesting. I'm pausing here to see if there's any other questions before I push on here with any further of my own. Looks like we're good right now. I'm curious to know how you think about distributing a product like this, going direct to farmer versus distributing through an agronomist or some other equipment supplier, and sort of what the advantages to sort of either scenario might be for you, and sort of and how you're thinking about pursuing that go-to market.
Yeah, so we do some direct farmer work today. Our primary methodology is to work with soil agronomists, work with equipment suppliers, and so our goal really is to get our units mounted on the front of everyone's tractor, and so the data is being vicariously collected. Now we'll still have to come out to your field once to take our training and sample data and kind of calibrate the model. But once that's produced, the model gets updated on the vehicle data alone. And maybe every few years we got to do some validation data collection just to ensure that the interpretation model we built for that field remains accurate. So our primary distribution model is we want to work with all the soil agronomists who are already spending time and going out to the field every year. We want to work with the equipment distributors who are already, again, local to the growers and engaging with them every single year. And the tractors and equipment that they sell is already driving over every single square inch of these fields. And so we don't want to drive over it a second time with our vehicle. We really want these sensors mounted to the tractor collecting data vicariously through normal field operations.
Got it. And do you think an individual customer would do, like you mentioned that last statement, so sort of like a remeasurement, recalibration once every few years, once a season, multiple times a season? What do you sort of envision being the best practice?
several times a season. So the most important one is going to be at harvest. And so if the data is collected either during harvest or after harvest, that's when the primary tillage decision is being made. But similarly, if this unit's is coming on with a 3-point hitch mount, so it could be put on any vehicle anytime you're going over the field. And so this map could be updated every time you're going over there. And so the only limitation to what map is being updated is the kind of training data we created. So if we've been able to come out and do a carbon map, a nutrient map, or a compaction map of your field, all those maps are going to get updated to the best of the model's ability based on every time you drive over that field. So that's really the target we're going for.
Great. Well, Lars, before we conclude things here today, I'm curious, what can the audience do to help you best, and where can they find you?
Well, my email is on the first slide. I'll jump through it. So don't hesitate to reach out to me via email. You can see it's lars.dyrud@earthoptics.com. And we're looking for folks who want to try it out this year. We're ultimately looking for folks who want to sell this machine to, either through us or some of the partners. So we're looking for soil agronomists. We're looking directly for growers who are operating decent sized operations who want to work with us this year, and we'll come out and map their fields directly. So we're looking for anyone who wants to start getting on this program of being able to make automatically updated maps every time they drive over the field.
Excellent. Well, Lars, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on all the progress to date. I'd also like to thank the audience for your participation today and for hearing EarthOptics' story. To let you all know, we host these calls every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time. You can register for Agri-Food Conversations by going to agrifoodconversations.com. You can also refer anybody that you would like to refer this to agrifoodconversations.com, or you can share the webinar recording with them, which will be shared with you via email in the next 24 hours. But otherwise, thank you for joining us today, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
David, thanks so much for having me, and thank you to iSelect.
Thank you.